The next great archaeological discovery could be hiding anywhere. Maybe it's buried in the sands of Egypt. Perhaps it's hidden in a South American jungle. Maybe, just maybe, it's around the corner in your hometown. We never know where they'll turn up, but we love hearing their stories. Let's tell a few of them in this video. In early 2018, gardener Dekel Ben Shitrit was tending to plants in communal gardens in Galilee when he unearthed a tiny ring among the vegetation. He picked it up and cleaned it, and was fascinated to see a human figure etched into its surface. Dekel was curious to know more about what he'd found, so he posted a picture of it on Facebook and asked for advice. That's where it caught the attention of local historians and archaeologists, who were quickly able to confirm that the ring dates to the medieval era, and that the figure depicted on it is Saint Nicholas. That would explain why he has a halo and is carrying a bishop's staff. Determining an exact age for the ring might never be possible, but it's likely to have been made somewhere between the 12th and 15th centuries. Saint Nicholas is associated with Father Christmas or Santa Claus in the Western world, but during the medieval era, he was the patron saint of travelers, sailors, merchants, and pilgrims. It's highly likely that the ring belonged to a pilgrim traveling to or from the coast, but it may instead have belonged to a trader. Students at a school in Turku, Finland, were shocked in early 2018 when renovation work inside their school gymnasium uncovered long-forgotten medieval ruins. Many of Turku's medieval ruins were destroyed in 1827 when a great fire tore through the city and burned down over 3/4 of the buildings. The school was built in the aftermath of the fire, but we now know the work was carried out directly on top of the remains of at least 2 medieval houses and a section of a street. Archaeologists believe that if they were to carry on digging and rip up the schoolyard as well, they would find more of the street, and probably several more houses too. The school isn't keen on that idea and would like the archaeologists to give them their gym back as well. Local authorities have recently tried to find a way to preserve the ancient ruins without causing any harm to the school. One possible option is to finish excavating the ruins, put the floor of the gym back on top, and open up an underground museum at the same time. The most famous ancient necropolis in Egypt is Saqqara, which has turned up countless archaeological finds in recent years and will likely continue doing so for the next decade. It's far from the only notable ancient necropolis in the country, though. In February 2018, archaeologists found another one in Minya, which is more than 150 miles south of Cairo. Burial grounds have been found in Minya before, but this one, which dates to the late Pharaonic period, had somehow been missed until then, despite being far larger. Some of the tombs found in the necropolis belong to people known to Egyptologists, including the high priests of Thoth and their family members. One of them is named specifically as Dehuti Urdies, one of the great 5 senior priests of the deity, who's buried with no fewer than 40 members of his family and countless statuettes, examples of fine pottery, and other grave goods. Thus far, 13 burials have been opened and fully explored by archaeologists, with more to come in the future. Perhaps the Minya necropolis will one day be as well known as Saqqara is. Burial sites in Egypt can be complex, so follow-on discoveries are sometimes made many years after initial discoveries have taken place. As an example, let's look at a recent find from the necropolis of Kesna, also known as Kuwaisna, in the central Nile Delta. The site is now an archaeological complex and has been studied and excavated since 1989. Experts have determined that the Egyptians first used the necropolis around 2,300 years ago, and that use continued way past the fall of ancient Egypt until the 7th century. However, these 2018 discoveries are undeniably ancient Egyptian. It's a collection of mummies who were buried with shards of gold in their mouths, where their tongues ought to be. It's a strange discovery, but it's one that Egyptologists have seen before. According to Egyptian belief, the dead needed to be able to speak to the judge of the dead upon arriving in the afterlife. It was thought that a golden tongue would help them to state their case better, thus making it easier to reach paradise. In some cases, this might have been an attempt to give speech to people who were mute in life. Yukon, the most northwestern province of Canada, is an unsurprisingly icy place. However, in recent years, the ice has begun to melt. As it does so, it surrenders relics of the past. In January 2018, archaeologists in Yukon found a copper-headed barbed arrow, with the tip still firmly attached to its barbed antler shaft. The weapon is in near pristine condition, but is more than 1,000 years old. It's one of the earliest copper artifacts ever to be found in northern Canada. According to Canadian historians, the arrow would have been fired by an ancient hunter looking to take a caribou home for meat. At the time the arrow was fired, it was a recent technology upgrade. Until around 1,100 years ago, the region's hunters used throwing weapons called atlatl rather than arrows, because the bow and arrow hadn't been invented in this part of the world. The copper used in the tip is incredibly pure, some 99.9%, and is local. Caribou still roam this part of Canada, but these days they tend to be a lot safer from hunters. Boxing has been around as a sport for almost as long as humans have walked the earth. It seems that there have always been athletes willing to fight each other for supremacy, and there have always been crowds willing to cheer them on, too. The earliest references we have to boxing as a sport date back 3,000 years to ancient Egypt, but a recent discovery in Northumbria, England, has proven that the ancient Romans were fans of the sweet science too. Found at the region's Vindolanda Roman fort, these two leathery lumps are primitive boxing gloves, and they're around 1,900 years old. Although we know that the Romans enjoyed boxing, these are the only two surviving gloves that have ever been found. It's thought that different units within the Roman army would battle each other in boxing matches for bragging rights and supremacy, although it was also known that their friends enjoyed gambling on the outcome of the contests too. This particular pair were well worn and loved. Their owner thought enough of them to patch them up rather than throw them away, presumably only doing so when they were finally beyond repair. No matter where you live in the world, you've probably heard of the Muppets. They're probably the most famous puppet characters in history. If you've heard of the Muppets, then you've probably also heard of Gonzo, which means you might see a resemblance between Gonzo and this strange medieval carving. It was found during the digging of the Lincoln Eastern Bypass Highway in Washingborough, England, in early 2018. While the resemblance to Gonzo is strong and undeniable, the correct name for this artifact is a corbel. It was carved during the 12th century and likely once adorned a chapel or a church. Its appearance is a little comical to us today, but in the 12th century, its purpose was to terrify people. The person who carved the corbel hoped that those who attended church would see it and be so scared of it that they'd abandon any idea of committing sins, lest they be attacked and devoured by one of these beak-faced demons. Making corbels is a tradition that was imported to Britain from France after the Norman conquest of 1066. It was the Normans who taught the Brits to make their churches out of stone. Prior to that, they'd mostly been made of wood. We're moving on to Norway, where archaeologists think they might be inching closer to tracing the origins of chess. This 800-year-old chess piece was discovered in Tonsberg in January 2018. Tonsberg has always been of interest to Norwegian archaeologists on account of it being the oldest city in the country. The chess piece was discovered in the ruins of a 13th century building and is thought to come from the same era. The artifact is made from antler and may once have had a lead stand inserted into its center to ensure that it remained upright when placed on a board. What's piqued the interests of the experts is the fact that the piece is designed in accordance with Islamic traditions, with no human figures depicted anywhere on its surface. The presence of the piece in Norway lends further weight to the theory that chess came to Europe from the Middle East, where it was definitely being played by the 7th century, and might go back even further than that. The lack of a human figure makes it hard to identify the piece, but experts are fairly sure that it's a knight. Our attention now shifts to China, where a colossal cache of copper coins was discovered in October 2017. There are more than 300,000 coins in total, with a combined weight of 5.6 metric tons. The ancient coins were found during construction work in Chalian village, which is close to Jingdezhen in Jiangxi province. With very few exceptions, they're all Wen coins, and were minted during the Song dynasty, which began in 960 and lasted until 1279. Nobody knows how the coins got there, but local folklore says it's the personal treasure of a mysterious landlord who buried it all beneath the foundations of his home 1,000 years ago. That's unlikely to be true though, as copper coins weren't particularly valuable. Obviously, there's value in having 300,000 of them, but a landlord would have traded them in for gold or silver bullion to make their wealth easier to manage and store. That begs the question of who really owned these coins and why they kept their wealth in copper coinage rather than exchanging it for something more valuable. We'll probably never know. We know that our ancient ancestors loved playing board games. Many of the board games we play today are based on games that were invented hundreds or even thousands of years ago. Some of the games our ancestors came up with, though, are total mysteries to us because they didn't think to leave the instructions behind for us to find. Take, for example, the board game that was found inside the tomb of a Germanic prince in Poprad, Slovakia in 2006. The board is damaged but fairly well preserved, but that hasn't helped historians to identify it. As best as they can tell, this ancient board game has no parallel anywhere else in the world. It's roughly 1,600 years old and is divided into squares like a chessboard. Green and white playing pieces were found with the board, but finding the pieces doesn't tell us how to use them. This isn't uncommon. We don't really know how to play the ancient Viking board game Nefertafel, despite several modern-day board game experts attempting to reconstruct the rules. And we're not sure about the ancient Roman board game Ludus Latrincolorum either. Cooking meals was a communal activity in England during the Iron Age. You can see that from the size of these cauldrons, which were found at an ancient feasting site in Glenfield Park, Leicestershire in November 2017. The site was explored by archaeologists in advance of the construction of a large commercial warehouse and yielded several exciting results. It seems that during the Iron Age, there was a small settlement here, but nobody knew it existed until the archaeologists turned up. The team identified enclosures, post holes, pits, and roundhouses at the northernmost end of the planned development site, plus evidence that the site remained inhabited throughout the Roman era in the British Isles. The area is particularly rich in ancient metalwork, including brooches, horn caps, dress pins, and, of course, these 11 metal cauldrons. It's only the second time multiple Iron Age cauldrons have been found together in Europe, and by far the largest. The cauldrons were arranged in a circular ditch surrounding a building, after which the ditch was filled in, perhaps signifying the end of ceremonial activities at the site. It appears to have been an unfortunate fact of life in ancient China that when leaders or warriors went to their final resting place, their horses went with them, whether they were dead or not. In November 2017, archaeologists uncovered a mass burial site containing 4 ancient chariots and the remains of almost 100 horses in Xinjiang City, Henan Province. The chariots can reliably be dated to China's spring and autumn period some 2,700 years ago. One of the chariots is especially impressive, measuring 9 feet by 5 feet and elaborately decorated with bronze and bone. It's likely that this is a family tomb that belonged to one of the Zhang state's noble families. Unfortunately, no inscriptions or written records have been found within the tomb. They did, however, find plenty of impressive bronze artifacts, which serve as further confirmation of the wealth of the tomb's owners. Curiously, they weren't able to find any human remains, despite being positive that there must have been some in the tomb at some point. As the horses almost certainly went into the tomb alive, it's gruesomely possible that they may have eaten the remains of their owners.
Subscribe to the channel, turn on the notification bell, and enjoy watching new videos on my channel. Thanks for watching, and see you soon!